Welcome to Insights. I'm Adam Rivers.
And I'm Sarah Collins. In this episode, we'll reflect carefully on the Quran verse, by verse focusing on wording, context, and coherence.
It is really great to be back with you. Today, we are staring at a map. Or, maybe it is actually more accurate to say we're realizing we do not have a map.
Which is a completely terrifying realization when you think about it.
It really is. We are continuing our series on the Quran, and we are looking at it through that really specific lens we always use. Wording, context, structural coherence.
Right.
And today we are landing on what is often described as the absolute gravitational center of the opening chapter, Al-Fatiha.
Yeah, the core of it.
Exactly. We are looking at verse 6, Ihdina al-Sirat al-Mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path.
It is just such a famous phrase. If you look at the raw numbers, this is a sentence that is repeated by billions of people multiple times a day.
Yeah, it is ubiquitous.
But when you strip away that familiarity and you actually look at the architecture of the chapter, this verse is doing something really strange.
Strange how? What do you mean by strange?
Well, look at where we have been. In our last episode, we covered the first half of the Surah.
Right.
It was grand cosmic theology, Lord of the worlds, Master of the Day of Judgment. It was very high-level stuff. Then we hit verse 5, which we called the climax. You alone we worship, and you alone we ask for help.
Right, and that felt like the signature on the contract.
Exactly.
We established who God is, we established who we are, and we signed the deal. I'm with you.
Exactly. And logically, you might think the conversation ends right there. You have pledged allegiance. The deal is done.
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. But the argument here is that if the chapter ended at verse 5, we would be in serious trouble.
Why, though? If I have committed to the mission, isn't that enough? I am in.
Think about it in modern terms. Let us say you decide to run a marathon.
Okay.
You sign the form, you pay the fee, you buy the very expensive shoes, you post on social media saying, I am a runner. That is verse 5. You have the intent.
Okay, I have the bib number pinned to my shirt. I am ready to go.
But do you have the lungs?
No.
Do you have the training schedule? Do you actually know the route you are running?
Definitely not. I would probably collapse at mile 2.
And that right there is the pivot point we are looking at today. Verse 5 is the commitment, but verse 6 is the mechanism.
Oh, wow.
The moment you say, I am going to worship you, the immediate crushing realization should be that I am a flawed, finite, messy human being, and I have absolutely no idea how to pull this off.
So the confidence of verse 5
Yeah.
just immediately collapses into the desperation of verse 6.
Desperation might be a strong word, but yeah, it fits. It is a reality check. There is this beautiful tension here. You have the infinite God on one side, and you have this finite human on the other.
Right.
And you have just promised to align your entire life with the infinite. That is an impossible task for a human to do without help.
So this isn't just a basic prayer request. It is a survival strategy.
Precisely. It is the how-to manual. And that brings us to the first word, which is honestly a rabbit hole all on its own. Ihdina, guide us.
Now, I want to push back on this a little bit, because I know there are lots of words for teaching or telling in Arabic.
There are.
So why focus so heavily on Ihdina? If I want to know how to live, why doesn't the verse just say, Allimna, teach us? Or Akbarna, inform us?
That is the million-dollar question right there. And the answer lies in the difference between a textbook and a Sherpa.
Okay, I like that. Break that down for me.
If I teach you the path, I can just hand you a map. I can give you a coordinate. I can say, Adam, the destination is 500 miles north. Make sure you avoid the quicksand.
And then I have the information. My brain has the data.
You have the data. But guidance, specifically the word huda that is used here, implies an existential direction. It is not just a data transfer.
Okay.
This verse uses the analogy of the desert, which is crucial because of where this revelation actually landed.
Right, in 7th century Arabia.
Imagine the deep desert. There are no landmarks. There are no paved roads. The dunes shift overnight, so the landscape literally changes while you sleep. If I give you a paper map in that environment, it is totally useless. You cannot read the terrain just because you have a piece of paper.
So asking for mere information in that context basically gets you killed.
Exactly. You do not need a map. You need a dalil. You need a guide.
A living guide.
A living, breathing expert who takes your hand. The word Ihdina carries this deep connotation of leading by the hand. It implies that the guide is with you, walking the path, pointing out the specific rock to step on, pulling you back when you start to drift toward a mirage.
That is a much more intimate concept than I expected. I usually just think of guidance as a GPS voice, turn left in 500 feet.
Right, but a GPS is completely passive. It assumes you already know how to drive the car. It assumes you're not going to fall asleep at the wheel.
Good point.
The concept of Huda here covers the whole human package. It covers the insight to see the truth, but it also covers the volition, the actual willpower to choose it.
That is a huge distinction.
Yeah.
Because I think we have all had that moment where we know the right thing to do, like I have the information.
Yes.
I know I shouldn't eat the donut. I know I shouldn't lose my temper with my kids, but I do it anyway.
Right, exactly. That is the gap. That is the quintessential human condition.
Oh, yeah.
If the problem with humanity was just a lack of information, we could solve all the world's problems with Wikipedia. We have all the data. We know what creates justice. We know what creates health. But we do not do it.
Because of what? Because of our internal stumbling block.
Exactly. Fear, greed,
Yeah.
laziness, cognitive biases. The guide us prayer is acknowledging that my hardware is faulty.
Yeah.
It is saying, God, do not just show me the road, grab me, inspire my heart to actually want the road, and give my limbs the strength to walk it.
It is effectively asking for total reform.
It really is.
Right.
And there is another layer to this desert guide imagery that I think is just fascinating. In the deep desert, the guide was the literal difference between life and death. Because he knew where the water was.
The hidden aquifers in spring.
Yes, and he knew the escape routes when storms rolled in. This surah views life as a moral desert. There are infinite ways to get lost out there.
Infinite mirages.
Mirages everywhere, things that look like success or happiness but turn out to be completely empty. Asking for Huda is admitting that I cannot navigate this terrain on my own logic.
Which I guess brings up the frequency of the request. You do not ask for a guide just once.
No, you do not. And this actually answers a really common criticism. People ask if I am already a believer, aren't I already guided? Why do I have to keep asking for it 17 times a day in my prayers?
Yeah, it does seem kind of redundant, like I am already on the team coach.
Right, but that assumes guidance is a possession. Like it is a trophy you win once and put on a shelf. I acquired guidance in 2015 and I am good.
Yeah.
The Quranic worldview is that guidance is a renewable energy source. It is like oxygen. You breathed 5 seconds ago. Great. You still need to breathe right now.
Because the terrain changes.
The terrain changes and you change. The challenges you faced at 20 years old are not the challenges you face at 40. The guide me you needed when you were single and broke is very different from the guide me you need when you have power and money.
That is actually a really scary thought, to be honest. The idea that you can just lose the signal so easily.
It is scary, but it is actually built in as a psychological safety net against arrogance.
How so?
Well, think about the most dangerous person in any room. It is usually the guy who thinks he knows absolutely everything, the one who thinks he has arrived.
Right, the fixed mindset.
Exactly. If you believe you own the truth, you become stagnant. You stop listening to feedback. You stop self-correcting. But if your fundamental identity is a seeker, if you have to literally ask for guidance every few hours, it forces a perpetual state of humility.
You are constantly admitting you don't have it all figured out.
Right. I do not have this fully figured out yet. I still need help.
It keeps you malleable.
It keeps you alive spiritually.
I want to shift gears to the grammar for a second. And I know grammar usually makes people tune out, but this is actually really weird and fascinating.
You are talking about the pronouns.
The pronouns, yeah. The verse says, Ihdina, guide us.
Yes.
But usually when people pray, especially if they're in a crisis, it is very me-focused. God help me, save my job, heal my mom.
Right. It is the default human setting, self-preservation.
But here, even if you are standing totally alone in your room at 3 in the morning, completely isolated, the verse forces you to use the plural. Guide us. Why drag everyone else into my private spiritual moment?
This is honestly one of my favorite insights from these verses. It is the sociological antidote.
Okay.
The Qur'an is embedding a very specific worldview here, which is that you cannot walk the straight path alone.
So there is no rugged individualism allowed?
Not here. The straight path is not some private VIP tunnel that gets you into heaven while you ignore the rest of the world. It is a public road. It involves commerce, relationships, justice, how you treat your neighbor. You literally cannot be guided in a vacuum.
So by saying in his Venice, I am acknowledging that my salvation is intrinsically tied up with yours.
Exactly. And think about the holier-than-thou complex we touched on earlier. It is very easy for religious people to look at society and say, well, I am doing great. I do not drink. I do not steal. Look at all those sinners over there.
The classic us versus them mentality.
But this prayer kills that dead. You are not allowed to say, guide me. You have to say, guide us. You are praying for the guidance of the very people you might be naturally tempted to judge.
Oh, wow.
You are asking for the entire community to be lifted up alongside you.
It creates a deep sense of shared humanity and shared fate.
And shared responsibility. This implies that you cannot block the path for others while asking to be guided on it yourself. If you are being a gatekeeper, or you are making religion overly difficult, or you're just being judgmental, you are actively contradicting your own daily prayer.
That is a heavy burden. It
Oh.
turns what feels like a private spiritual request into a binding social contract.
It does. It reminds you that you are just one single traveler in a massive caravan. You are not the center of the universe.
Speaking of the caravan, let us talk about the road itself. We are asking to be guided to Al-Sirat.
Al-Sirat.
And again, the grammar police are waving a flag here. It is the path. Singular, definite.
Yes. It is not just a path among many, it is the path.
Which to a modern ear honestly sounds a little rigid, doesn't it? We live in the age of my truth and your truth. Everything is supposed to be relative. This verse seems to be drawing a very hard line in the sand.
It is, and the Quran does not shy away from that at all. The idea is that while there are a million ways to get lost, a million ways to wander off a cliff in the desert, there is usually only one safe way to cross a narrow bridge.
That is a fair point. Gravity does not really care about my personal truth.
Exactly. Gravity is objective, and the text is asserting that there is an objective moral reality too. There is a true north. Now, you can view that as restrictive, or you can view it as incredibly liberating.
How is being restricted to just one path liberating? That feels counterintuitive.
Because of the anxiety of choice. We suffer from it constantly today. Did I marry the right person? Did I take the right job? Is this the right parenting style?
Right.
When everything is entirely subjective, you are constantly paralyzed by the fear that you picked the wrong option. You are exhausted by the options.
The paradox of choice.
Right. But if there is the path, a single objective standard of what is good, healthy, and true, then you can actually relax into it. You do not have to reinvent morality every single morning when you wake up. You just have to find the path and walk it.
That brings us to the word itself, sirat. I was looking at the etymology, and I honestly thought it was a typo at first.
Oh, the swallowing connection.
Yes. The root word connects to sart, which means to swallow. That sounds like a premise for a horror movie. Guide us to the road that eats us. What on earth does that actually mean?
It does sound really intense when you say it like that. But think about the difference between walking on a tiny little hiking trail versus merging onto a massive 12-lane superhighway.
Right.
On a little hiking trail, you are constantly looking at the bushes, the rocks, the side paths. You are easily distracted. Every step requires a decision. But when you merge onto a massive highway, the road just takes over. It dictates your movement. You are consumed by the flow of the traffic.
You are in the zone.
You are completely in the flow. The idea is that the straight path is so clear, so wide, and so evident that it swallows the traveler. It unifies your focus. You are not constantly looking over your shoulder or wondering if you should take a sketchy shortcut through the swamp.
So it essentially eliminates decision fatigue.
That is the key. It unifies the scattered self. Instead of being pulled in 50 different directions by 50 conflicting desires, you're moving in one solid direction.
Which connects perfectly to the adjective used right after it. It is not just a road that swallows you. It is mustaqim, the straight path. But mustaqim doesn't just mean a straight line drawn on a piece of paper, does it?
No, and this is where the physics of the language comes in. The root is QWM, which is fundamentally about standing up. Qiyam.
Standing up like a human being stands up.
Yes. Think about the physical mechanics of standing upright. It looks completely static to an observer, but it is actually highly active. Your muscles are constantly micro-adjusting to fight gravity. If your muscles stop trying, you fall over.
So straightness here isn't about being rigid like a steel bar. It is more about balance.
It is about the continuous correction of the lean. This is the concept of rectifying the lean. Because humans naturally lean.
We definitely lean toward the couch.
We lean toward the couch. We lean toward easy money. We lean toward anger when we feel slighted. We have these powerful gravitational pulls toward our lower selves.
Right.
Mustaqim means having the spiritual core strength to constantly pull yourself back to the center every time you start to tip.
So it is not about absolute perfection then. It is not guide us to the path where we never trip and fall.
No, that is impossible for a human. It is guide us to the path where when we inevitably trip, we have the resilience to get back up. It is dynamic uprightness. It connects back to the word qiwam, which means the spine or the backbone. This path is the backbone of existence. Without it, you are just a jellyfish. You completely collapse under pressure.
That dynamic quality is really interesting because it accounts for the human struggle. It acknowledges that staying straight is hard, physical and spiritual work.
Exactly. It is resistance training. Every single time you refuse a bribe, or you tell the truth when it is super inconvenient, or you show patience when you just want to scream at someone, you are engaging those upright muscles. You are being mustaqim.
This leads us into something I found really profound in our preparation for this episode. We looked at the psychology of why we need this guidance, specifically the distinction between having a smart mind and having a guided heart.
Oh, this is absolutely critical. We tend to worship intelligence in our modern culture. We just assume that if someone has a high IQ, they are naturally going to be a good person.
But history is obviously full of very, very smart villains.
Exactly. The intellect is just a tool. It is like a knife. You can use a knife to perform life-saving surgery, or you can use it to mug someone in an alley. The knife does not care. It just cuts.
So the mind itself is morally neutral.
The mind is a mechanism. And without guidance, the mind just becomes the lawyer for the ego.
Oh, that is a great phrase. The lawyer for the ego.
It really is. Think about how good we are at rationalizing our own bad behavior. If I secretly want to be greedy, my smart mind won't say, hey, let's be greedy today. It will say, let's be financially prudent. Or, let's be realistic about the market conditions.
Or if I want to be cruel to someone, my mind happily calls it tough love or firm leadership.
Yes, we rebrand our sins. We use our intelligence to build these elaborate justifications for why we did the wrong thing. And that is exactly why the prayer is Ihdina, guide us. It is a desperate request to save the mind from its own rationalizations.
So you are basically asking for an internal compass that works before the mind starts spinning its wheels and making excuses.
Yes, you are asking for your core desires to be tuned to the truth. You want to reach a state where you naturally want what is right. Because if your heart wants one thing, say revenge, and your mind knows you should actually forgive them.
That is a civil war.
It is a brutal civil war inside your chest, and it is exhausting to live like that. True guidance is when the war finally ends. The heart says, I want peace, and the mind says, here's the path to peace. They are perfectly aligned.
That alignment really reminds me of the section on the integration of virtues. The straight path isn't just about picking one virtue and ignoring the rest. It's about the integration of them all.
This is the balance of mustaqim we were talking about.
Yeah.
You cannot just pick one virtue and run with it to the absolute extreme. For example, take the concept of truth.
Okay, honesty is generally good.
Honesty is very good, but honesty without wisdom is just brutality. If I walk up to you and say every single negative thought I have ever had about your haircut, I'm technically being honest, but I am not being mustaqim. I am just being a jerk.
Right, or take mercy. Mercy is obviously beautiful.
But mercy without justice is total chaos. If a judge lets every violent criminal go free just because he wants to be merciful, society collapses. The straight path forces these virtues to work together. It holds them in tension.
It prevents what we call virtue signaling today, where you just perform the easy stuff to look good.
Exactly. It demands a holistic morality. You have to be kind and firm, generous and prudent. That is why it is called a path and not a spot. It requires continuous movement and balance.
I want to touch on the efficiency argument we discussed earlier, too. It felt very pragmatic, almost like an engineering concept applied to morality.
It is highly pragmatic. We usually think of ethics as this heavy burden, like a backpack of annoying rules that just slows us down from having fun. But basic geometry teaches us something very simple. The straight line is the shortest distance between 2 points.
So the straight path is literally the most efficient way to live.
It produces human waste.
Human waste. That is a really strong phrase.
Think about the massive energy cost of immorality. Let us say you are living a lie. Maybe you are cheating on your taxes or you are cheating on a partner.
The maintenance cost of that has to be incredibly high.
It is astronomical. You have to constantly remember what you said, who you said it to, cover your tracks, manage your facial expressions when certain topics come up. That is entirely wasted mental energy that could be used for creativity, for love, for actual growth.
Or just for sleep?
Honestly, or for sleep. The straight path is ultimately about simplicity. It might be steep. It definitely requires effort to climb, but it is not complicated. You do not have to look over your shoulder. You are one person with one face, walking one road.
It sounds a lot like rest.
It is rest. It is the deep peace of living with integrity.
And this connects right back to the day of recompense we talked about in the last episode. There was this underlying concept of accumulated debt.
Right. The crooked path, the path of lying, cutting corners, oppression, often offers really quick wins.
Immediate gratification. The sugar rush of life.
Exactly. You get the profit from the fraud right now. You get the power from bullying someone right now. But this surah frames that as taking out a very high-interest loan.
You get the cash up front, but the debt is compounding every single day.
And eventually the bill comes due, whether that is in this life or the next. The straight path is the long game. It inherently avoids the accumulation of those consequences. You are not building up a massive backlog of apologies you need to make or messes you need to clean up. You are paying as you go.
I really love that framing. The straight path is the long game. It reframes the whole idea of what success actually is. We are so obsessed with quarterly results, in business and just in life.
We are. We always want the shortcut. But the shortcut is usually a trap. The straight path is the scenic, steady route that actually gets you home safely.
Before we wrap up, we absolutely have to address the elephant in the room. We have talked a lot about asking for guidance, about being led, about being swallowed by the path. So where's the free will in all of this?
Yes. Always the big question.
Right. If I'm constantly asking God to guide me, am I just a passenger? Am I just a puppet on a string?
The reflection actually argues the exact opposite. It says the very act of asking is the ultimate exercise of free will.
How so? That sounds like a paradox.
Because guidance is not forced upon you. In the Quranic worldview, God does not roboticize humans. He offers guidance. He sends the signals. But he respects human agency enough to wait for the invitation.
So the prayer guidance is basically me signing the permission slip.
It is you initiating the partnership. You are consciously saying, I choose to be led. You are using your free will to submit your will.
That is a paradox, but I definitely see the logic. It is kind of like finding a mentor. The mentor does not just barge into your house and start teaching you. You have to walk up and knock on their door.
Exactly. And honestly, you cannot genuinely say, guide us, if you are arrogant. The prayer itself inherently demands a crushing of the ego.
Because asking for directions is a fundamental admission that you do not know the way.
It is a daily admission of limited knowledge. And that brings us to the final thought on the identity of the seeker.
This was honestly my favorite part of all the preparation. The definition of what a believer actually is.
Yes. We often think a believer is someone who just has the truth. I have it. It is in my pocket. I am done.
Which almost always leads to fanaticism.
It leads to being incredibly closed-minded. But here, the believer is defined by the constant act of seeking. You are never actually done. You are constantly asking, constantly searching, constantly refining your course.
That kills fanaticism at the root, doesn't it?
It has to. If you truly believe you are dependent on daily guidance, you stay humble. You are a seeker. You are always looking for the light, always correcting your course. You cannot look down on others because you are too busy watching your own feet to make sure you do not trip.
You are always out on the road, never just sitting lazily at the destination claiming victory.
Exactly. And that is what keeps the heart alive. The moment you stop seeking, the heart calcifies.
That is a really powerful place to land. It completely shifts the perspective from a static, I am right, to a dynamic.
Help me be right.
And help us be right together.
That's it for this episode of Insights.
If you found this reflection helpful, follow the show and join us next time as we continue verse by verse in the Quran.
Until then, take one idea from this verse into your day.